Hello, my dear students. This is Dr. Kamal Hussain, Assistant Professor of Management and Human Resource Management, the Department of Business Administration, World University of Bangladesh. Today, I will discuss the chapter of business communication. Especially, I will focus the different communication barriers. The communication barrier and their importance in the organization is crucial. The communication barrier are problems that prevent messages from being understood clearly. These barriers may arise because of the language differences, noise, emotions, or poor listening skills. Understanding communication barrier help us to improve workplace relationships and avoid misunderstandings. By learning how to overcome these barriers, you can become more effective communicator in your future career. My dear students, there are many topics from this chapter. First, I will clarify you what's the meaning of communication barrier. After that, I will explain the different types of communication barrier. Then barriers related to the sender, barriers related to receiver, and after that I will discuss with you how to overcome the language barrier by sender, and finally I will explain the different ways to overcome the communication barriers. So one by one I will explain to you now. So first I will explain the different types of communication barrier. For example, the physical barriers. These barriers occur when the environment or physical conditions are not conducive. For example, loud noise in a factory makes it difficult for the workers to hear the instruction clearly from their boss. Language barrier. Differences in languages, pronunciation, or vocabularies create the misunderstanding. For example, the manager speaks in English, but some workers understand only Bengali. That will create the problem of making the effective communication. Psychological barrier. Emotions or mental conditions affect the communication. Here I will bring the example from the psychological barrier. A nervous student cannot express ideas properly during the presentation session. Cultural barrier. Differences in culture, traditions, and beliefs may cause the effective communication in the organization. For example, hand gestures acceptable in one country may be offensive in another country. Semantic barrier. Misunderstanding happens because words and symbols have different meaning. For example, the word bank may mean the financial institutions or the side of a river. Organizational barrier. Poor organizational structure or strict hierarchy interrupt the effective communication flow. Here I will give you the example. Employees cannot directly share the ideas with the top management because of many authorities levels are there. Therefore, it's quite difficult to pass the message from top to bottom or bottom to top. Perceptual barrier. The different attitudes, opinions, assumptions affect understanding. For example, two people interpret the same message differently because of the personal viewpoints. Technological barriers. Problems with the technology interrupt communication. The example is an online meeting is disturbed because of a poor internet connection. My dear students, now I will explain the barriers related to senders. What are the barriers will come from the sender? Lack of clarity in message. When sender cannot explain the message clearly. For example, the teacher gives confusing instruction for homework. Poor communication skills. Ineffective speaking, writing, or presentation skills create misunderstanding in the communication system. For example, a manager speaks too fast, so the employees cannot understand properly. That will hamper the effective communication flow. Use of difficult language. That is also the problem from the sender. Using the complex words, jargons, or the technical term confusing the receivers. For example, a doctor uses the medical terms that a patient cannot understand. Wrong choice of medium. Selecting an unsuitable communication channel affects the message delivery. For example, sending a long detailed report through a short text message is difficult for understanding the receivers. Emotional state of sender. Anger state and excitement may distort the message in the communication process. Here I will bring the example. An angry boss scolds employees without explaining the real problem, what has happened. Then lack of confidence or preparation. An unprepared sender may fail to communicate effectively. Here I will bring the example. A student giving a presentation without preparing forgets the important points. That's the examples of no preparation before communication. My dear students, now I will discuss the different barriers related to receivers, including the different examples. Poor listening skills. When the receiver does not listen carefully to the message. For example, students talk with the friends while the teacher is explaining a lesson. Then lack of attention or interest. The receiver may ignore the message because of low interest. Examples: employees do not pay attention during a long meeting. Then wrong interpretation. The receiver misunderstands the meaning of the message. For example, the worker misunderstands the instructions and then completes a wrong task. Emotional state of receiver. Fear, anger, stress, and sadness affect the effective communication and with understanding. Example of the emotional state is an upset employee cannot focus on the manager's advice. Prejudice or bias. Personal opinions and stereotypes prevent proper understanding in the communication process. Here I will bring the example: a person ignores suggestions because they dislike the speakers. Then lack of knowledge or education. The receiver may not understand the message because of limited knowledge. Here I will give you the example: a customer cannot understand the technical instructions for using a machine. That can be the example for the lack of knowledge or education. Hello my dear students. Now I am going to share the details of overcoming the language barrier by sender. Use simple and clear language. The sender should use easy words and short sentences. For example, a teacher explains a lesson using simple English instead of the difficult vocabulary. Avoid technical jargons. The sender should avoid the complex and professional terms when speaking to the general people. For example, a doctor explains a disease in a simple word so that the patient can understand. Speak slowly and clearly. So the speaker or sender should speak slowly and clearly. Clear pronunciation and moderate speed improves the understanding and then make a good communication process. For example, a customer service officer speaks slowly to help the foreign customer to understand the situation. Use visual aids and gestures. Pictures, charts, signs, and body language can support the communication. For example, a trainer can use the diagrams and hand gestures during the instructions. Translate or use the common language. The sender should communicate in a language familiar to the receiver. For example, a company manager uses Bengali to explain rules to the local workers. And then finally, ask for the feedback or confirmation. The sender should confirm whether the receiver understood the message correctly or not. My dear students, here the example is a teacher asks the students to repeat instructions after explaining them. Hello, my dear students. Now I am going to explain the different ways to overcome the communication barrier. And here I also include the different examples to make it clear to you. Use simple and clear language. Communication with easy words or short sentences avoid misunderstanding. For example, a teacher explains a topic using simple language for students so the students can understand very easy way. Practice active listening. Listen carefully and give full attention to the speaker. For example, an employee listens to the manager without interrupting and asking the question later. Provide feedback. Confirm whether the message has been understood clearly, correctly or not. For example, a supervisor asks the workers to repeat the instructions after receiving them. Then, choose the right communication medium. Select the suitable method such as email, telephone call, or face-to-face discussion. Here I will bring the example. A company uses the video calls for important online meetings. Reduce noise and distractions. Ensure a quiet and comfortable environment for communication. Examples: students choose the classroom windows or close the classroom windows to avoid the outside noise during the lecture series from the teacher. Develop cultural awareness and respect. Understand and respect the different cultures and beliefs. My dear students, here the example is an international company trains the employees about the cultural differences before overseas work. My dear students, I have finished the topic related to the communication barrier. Again, I am repeating you. First, I have mentioned the meaning of the communication barrier. Then, I explain the different types of communication barrier. After that, I discuss with you the barriers related to the sender and the receivers. Then I have explained how to overcome the language barrier by sender. And finally, I discuss with you the different ways to overcome the communication barrier. Thank you all for listening me.